And this truth is so hard to get heard because RT is completely banned in Europe. And then, of course, censored in the US. And, you know, journalists like Patrick Lancaster, Wyatt Reed, yourself, you know, Ava Bartlett, who brought a lot of attention to the butterfly mines and was there and filmed it, are getting intimidated, harassed, threats on their life, demonetized. You know, I think because you're in Moscow, I don't know how much of that you're receiving as far as backlash, but, you know, Patrick Lancaster, for instance, had his whole family threatened by Ukrainian military. And of course, Ava Bartlett has, as well as Anna Lipp, who's a German journalist who now has been threatened with prison for her reporting in that region. So what are you finding as far as the reporting goes, as far as the truth coming out? Do you feel like it's getting out there a little bit more, or do you still feel the frustration of the suppression and censorship?
I still feel the frustration of it, to be honest. I mean, I got threats just like that as well at the beginning of the military operation, when it was at the forefront of the Western media. They were all anonymous threats, but, you know, I had people sending me threats. They sent me the names of my parents and their address, threatening me to go do something to them. My website, the Revolution Report website, there were like hundreds of hacking attempts on it. Thank goodness we had like a protection software there. But this has generally calmed down as of late. And I think the reason for that is part of the mainstream media strategy to give Ukraine a little bit less attention than it was getting before, especially because there's a rift developing between Ukraine and the United States, and not just them, but also Ukraine and Poland, Ukraine and Germany, for all different historical reasons, for political decisions that Zelensky is deciding to make, because Zelensky seems like he's willing to go kamikaze. Like he's willing to like just fight down to the very last person and have a nuclear war if that's what it takes. And the West is like apprehensive about that, obviously. You know, they feel like they unleashed Pandora's box. This is what's going on behind the scenes. And we can kind of see that also in friction that's developing publicly. Like, for example, Polish officials have been saying that recently stuff that Ukraine is eventually going to have to admit that it committed genocide against the Polish people in World War II. Like, that's a bit random, you know, considering all this talk about being against Russia. We saw Ukraine's former ambassador defending Stepan Bandera in Germany and getting so much backlash from obviously the West, not inside Ukraine itself, but they were pressured so hard that they had to expel him. They had to dismiss him. There was also there were other instances that just aren't coming to my head right now, but we're seeing the cracks in this Western alliance. And it's because they're getting desperate. Western sanctions have fallen flat on their face. They've hurt, like you said, they've hurt the working people of the West, and the rich are just getting richer. In the US, in Russia, it's the opposite. The workers have benefited from the fact that the ruble has strengthened significantly in relation to the dollar. That means that normal Russians, you know, even though their salary has not changed, have a stronger currency for use abroad. And it actually means the opposite for Russian capitalists, because anyone who knows stuff about economics, you'll understand that when a currency strengthens in relation to foreign currencies, it makes it a lot more difficult for the capitalists of that country to compete from capitalists of other countries. So we're seeing it in Russia, and I've been in the State Duma, looking at listening to the discussions that the different parties are having. The representatives of the capitalist class here are really pushing for the currency to inflate. They really want to inflate the currency back to where it was. And the Communist Party and United Russia are saying we don't want to do that. So
You know, it's interesting that you brought all that up, because I remember in 2018 I had written a piece that got used against me later, that complimented Vladimir Putin. But what I did is, because, you know, I have family members. My brother is almost a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and martial arts is an interesting way of thinking. It's not just a sport, but it's actually a way of approaching things. And Vladimir Putin does judo. And I said in my article that he has almost a judo-like strategy when it comes to geopolitics, something like that, about using the weight. In other words, letting the weight be thrown around to his advantage. So in other words, the West, what it's doing with the sanctions, it's almost like he didn't resist it outwardly. He went with it and did economic development within Russia, because Russia has vast resources and is able to create their own grains and, you know, science development, tech development, all of that. They have the human and literal resources to create their own markets. They don't need the US. They don't need Europe. They don't have to get cheese from France. They can create their own, right? Which has been award winning, actually. And my point is that it kind of translates to movements. Movements are looking at this. Yes, there's a place for marching in the streets and you make that noise, but there's more long-term benefits from development within your communities. And so you see that strategy of sort of like, so in other